Right, so Pavel, I guess you will introduce yourself.
Yes, yes. So is the recording on right now? Can we start?
Yeah, let's start.
You may start.
All right. So hi all, welcome to this stream. I will be hosting this stream today. And my name is Paweł Leśniowski. I'm software engineer at EPAM. I work as a front-end developer. And today, let me just bring the schedule to do the interaction to this talk. And so we are the stage 1 in the school, and you already had these lectures. And today I will start this part, which is called JS Basics. And today I will be talking, there will be like JS intro. And in this intro, we will be talking briefly about the history, standardization, evolution of JavaScript. We'll mention something which is called WAT or WAT. We will go briefly about what TC39 is. We'll be talking about JavaScript and some additional small stuff. So this is the topics for our presentation today. So JavaScript intro. We'll start with some a bit boring stuff, which is history, and about the history of JavaScript. JavaScript was created by a guy which is called Brandon Eich during his work at Netscape Communications, the company. And the Netscape Communication company was actually created by a few lead developers who, like 2 years before the Netscape Communication was founded, they created a very first browser which was able to display some kind of graphics. And then they came up with this new browser, which was called Netscape Navigator. And for that purpose, they funded the Netscape Communication company. The JavaScript originally was first introduced under the name Mocha. It was on May 1995. Then it was released in September 95 under the name LiveScript, and then finally they come up with the name JavaScript, and they embedded this into their new Netscape Navigator 2.0. And that was actually the very first scripting approach to the dealing with the on the internet. So what happened next? Microsoft, seeing the growing interest in how the JavaScript is working in the browser, and the browser itself, tried to and stepped in and kind of tried to basically it started like a so-called war between the browsers, and Microsoft introduced their browser, which was Internet Explorer, and then also created their own version of scripting language and called it JavaScript. As a reply, Netscape decided to submit JavaScript to ECMA International. That's organization which standardize the languages, and they submitted JavaScript to be standardized between as a language. In 1997, the JavaScript was finally standardized, and it was named ECMAScript. And here it's worth mentioning that why it was called ECMAScript. The name actually for JavaScript, like if we want to be like in some, if we call this is as a documents, we can call we should call JavaScript ECMAScript, because this is like really official name for JavaScript. For JavaScript, it's actually ECMAScript. And why all this happened? At the time when JavaScript and Mocha and all this version for the names were created, the Netscape was collaborating with Sun company, and at the point they wanted to create something which is which will be like pleasant for the for at the point developers usually use Java, so they come up with this name JavaScript, just to have some similarity to the currently language on the market. So they come up with this JavaScript. However, the JavaScript was reserved trademark from Sun. So as a language, officially, it couldn't be named the same because there was Sun's corporation trademark. So they standardized this language under the name ECMAScript. And with ECMAScript and JavaScript, there's name TS39 very connected. You probably heard about this. And what actually is TC39? So TC39 is a technical community which is responsible for evolution of ECMAScript language, and they're also working about on this specification for that language. And who are these guys? These guys, like if the company wants to like participate in the, because nobody owns ECMAScript language, programming language. Some big companies contribute to this to this language, and they can send their programmers to help to develop this language. And so these guys are some of the part of the ECMAScript team, and these people are basically developers who on the daily basis they work for big companies, and from like the additional work they contribute to the ECMAScript programming language. And how do they work? So about this, you can see here the link. This is the link to the whole interview with these people. This can give you a lot of insight. How do they work exactly? So I recommend checking this this link after the stream, so you can get more information. But in very general, they have some kind of stages where you can, when they group ideas and projects to be added, which are added to the language. So in the stage 0, we have ideas, and they kind of discussed about the reason about these ideas. Actually, they really encourage people and developers to place these ideas there, so they are like under the discussion. When they find some of the ideas reasonable and consider they as a good proposals, they put them in the stage 1. Then they take some of the ideas and start to develop this. They kind of prepare a draft for the feature, and this is all happening in the stage 2. Then when something is implemented, it's in the stage 3, and then it comes to release, which is called stage 4. But this is actually like in the very beginning, it's in the stage 4, but once it's in the language, it just disappears from the stage 4. Stage 4 is like just for a short time when this is like ready and just waiting for the release. More about if you want to participate in the future, or you are curious what features are upcoming or proposal, please follow this link. It's on GitHub, and you can see all their discussion there. So JavaScript versions. There are a lot of them already. First was, as I mentioned in the very beginning, in 1997, there was first official version of the language. Then there was some changes, but basically the most, at least from my perspective, the most like the biggest changes happened on the ECMAScript 6, when they added classes and modules, when the language and all the next releases also added some very interesting features. However, the 6 was like really which changed the syntax of and how the language looks. And yeah, so now we'll move to something different. It's actually how the engine and JavaScript works together. So in the very beginning, we write some code. We have script and we run it, but the computer, the hardware, it doesn't understand the language itself. This needs to be processed by some kind of JavaScript engine, which will just take our code and change this code into sequences understandable for the CPU of our in our computer. And so JavaScript engine, it's a crucial thing which makes the language itself understandable for our machines. And it's worth mentioning, I don't know if you know how many engines you heard about, but there are lots of engines. The most popular, of course, V8. But if you want to check the whole list of the engines, you can go and follow this link. But now it's like a question to you. You don't have to like answer me, but just that you can like think about who do you think created the very first JS engine. So the answer is, it was, of course, Brendan Eich. And because he created like the language itself, so he had to also create some kind of software which will translate this JavaScript so the browser will understand, so our computer will understand what this language is doing actually. And he implemented this in Netscape Navigator 2.0. So that was the first. And this engine was called SpiderMonkey. It was the first JavaScript engine. So what is happening actually in the JS engine? So this is example taken from V8 code, V8 engine, which is created by Google. But mostly they work in very similar way. So in the very beginning, we have JavaScript source code. And then there's a parser. And parser analyzes our code, checks the syntax, and create in the very beginning abstract syntax tree, which kind of looks like just like array of everything you put in the code. It looks like bunch of these comments in structured in some particular way, so it is understandable by the next step, which is interpreter. So in the very beginning, there's interpreter, and interpreter reads our code like line by line, and creates bytecode. And at this point, our JavaScript is already executed. When this bytecode is ready, this is the JavaScript begins to be executed. But there's also, and that was in the very beginning, it worked only like this. But in order to optimize our code, I think that Google was one of the first one, or maybe that was the most important in the V8, that they added this optimizing compiler for the code. So every time something in our code kind of repeats itself, so there's a function call, and on every function call we are getting the same result. So it means that we don't have to, the CPU doesn't have to every time calculate and run this function. So with this situation deals a compiler, which kind of, for example, if function returns some value over and over the same, it just replaces this function with some kind of return value. So you don't run the function, you just are getting the value. So this means that the code is optimized. If something is broken, this actually become de-optimized. If the V8 or JavaScript engine encounters any error, this can be de-optimized. But in general, code, like the engine, is trying to optimize the code so it performs as fast as possible. And very good at this is the most famous V8 Google's engine. So this is actually the summary, and like in the breaking in the points what I said. So parser creates SMT. I think actually I said already all this. So interpreter translate and read files. It works only line by line, and compiler, on the other hand, reads our code ahead and understands what the code does and rewrites our code to new optimized code. So it cannot change this. And this is when, if you get a question, for example, if JavaScript is compiled language, so here you can actually understand where this compilation appears, because in different languages like Java, we have the compilation, we just compile and we have this compiled version of our code. But here the compilation occurs on the fly. So during the execution, we have the compilation process. So JavaScript is compiled language, but the compilation happens on the fly during the execution. And yeah, we're going to the next step, which is JavaScript, and why we may consider learning only this language. So some of people already found it, that JavaScript now has a lot of the places where it can be applied. So of course, it happens on the front end. So front end was built on the JavaScript since 1997. So it was used some time ago, about 4 or 5 years ago. Google tried to use a different language, a different approach for the front end. It was called, the language is called Dart. And they kind of, I recently learned about Dart something, and they actually failed. Half of this project failed because they stopped supporting using Dart for some kind of subset of Angular. It was called Angular Dart, and this Angular used Dart language. Actually, Dart language was not that bad. It actually was like, it had a lot of features. It still has, actually. The Dart language itself, it still exists, but the Angular Dart had it was like impossible for them to have to implement Angular Dart with web components, which is very important thing. So developers started to turning back to the Angular Dart, and they kind of suspended the project. Probably it's already like 2 years when they stopped supporting Angular Dart. So probably they will not come back. The Dart itself, it's still alive because it's you can create with Dart hybrid application on Flutter, which is pretty good, decent thing. But in order to use it, you need to learn a new language, which would lead us to different thing. Here we have mobile hybrid apps. So if you still want to create mobile applications, you can do it with a tool like React Native. And with React Native, you can create hybrid apps. And hybrid means that it can be run not only for, because usually we use Java or Kotlin for the Android applications, and I believe Swift for the iOS. And React, it deals with that you can create for both. With one code base, you can create application for both platforms. So this is the advantage of hybrid apps. We also have desktop application. You can create a desktop application with native desktop application with JavaScript. I know at least one. It's Electron. You can use it for this, but I also remember there are more than just the one. We have also, of course, JavaScript on the backend, thanks to Node.js, which, by the way, runs also on this V8 Google's engine. And so on the input, you have JavaScript, and wherever you can install Node, you can also run the JavaScript, because Node from the input, like Node understands from one side the JavaScript, and the other side works with C++ language. So it communicates with the hardware on the machine which is installed on. So whenever you can install Node, and this is like on probably on every computer you can install Node, you can run it. And this computer can be a server, or for example, these small computers called Raspberry Pis, I think. So you can install that, and you can manage this device with the JavaScript. You can also have NoSQL databases, for example, MongoDB. It's really nice and simple database which you can run query with JavaScript. And there is also very, very important field, testing. For now, for many years, automating testing was done via tools like Selenium. Mostly Selenium was worked with Java, .NET. I know that even now there's possibility to run Selenium with JavaScript, but there are also new testing tools which are like by design, they work only on JavaScript. They are written on JavaScript. The example, you can, for example, have Cypress. It's a really good end-to-end testing tool. So you can basically be a tester with JavaScript and work in only one language. Okay, the next thing. So I said a lot good things about here about the JavaScript itself, but we can find on the internet, especially on the Facebook and places where people make fun of many things, we can find many jokes about how ridiculous sometimes JavaScript output is. For example, and all this idea was kind of called what? So, for example, when we try to add to arrays, we get empty string. When we try to add something like array and empty array and empty object, we get this string, and it is like object. And there are like lots of examples. Some of them have like good explanation why it happens. In the very beginning, someone just assumed some kind of behavior, and now they are just consist with this approach. And this is what happened when the language, when you try to put something like this. However, I see that this kind of things are present not only in JavaScript, they are present in many different also languages. But usually I see these jokes about JavaScript. Maybe there are more in JavaScript, this kind of behavior. But still, you don't have to like know that, for example, this will give us this kind of inputs. You can read about this, but in the everyday development, actually, we have typings. We check what's going on in the code, and actually, I never did some mistake. So I think it's more like kind of joking. And here I give you a link. You can read more about behavior, why sometimes behave like this. And I think, yeah, this is more like a joke, and you don't have to like learn all this to avoid these mistakes. You need to be just aware about that. So the next thing is Asm.js and the program Emscripten, which allows you to write JavaScript a bit more performant. So the idea here is that this Asm.js, it's some kind of it's like subset of JavaScript, which basically means that it has a slightly different, not maybe syntax, but has some additions to the language. And these additions, they kind of optimize the work of the compiler, and everything what happens there in the engine, what I mentioned before, can be a bit optimized. So we can give a hint to the JavaScript engine that something, for example, will be a number. So it won't be guessing, will be some kind of type. So this, I would call the enhancement, is called Asm. But writing like this, it would be like bothering, and we don't write this code like that. However, if we, for example, know different languages like C, C++, which is more performant, we can write code in C++, then use their compiler to create a binary. So this program will translate this binary into optimized JavaScript code, but optimized in the sense, oh, I'm sorry, I was just in the sense of this ASM. So basically, we are getting the binary from here, and we translate this into JavaScript. But what is the main idea? So more about this, of course, you can have here a link for this. But the main idea is here that we have better performance. So here, the fastest one was the native app, which was written in C language, for example. It's very fast because C language is more performant and more optimized than JavaScript. So it performs very well. Here is the same program written in JavaScript. And here is this kind of optimized code, which gives us some savings of the time. And so this is important if we're thinking about like blazing fast application. So maybe, however, by myself, I didn't have a chance to work with this code like this. So it's interesting thing, but I haven't found this that very common. And we have state of JavaScript for this year. So what is upcoming and what tools will be like which okay, let's just go down to the business. So we have some trends in the development right now. If we go like the software development companies, most of the work is done by these three guys. It's Vue, it's React, Angular, and of course we cannot forget about web components. And web components, it's this idea of not having a framework involved into the development. So we can use framework, but in web components, it's something which is done only with JavaScript, with template and CSS. So basically, you have this component, web component, which can work with, I mean, with React maybe a bit worse, but it works really good with Angular. So once we create web component, we can use this in many, for example, many places. If you create a component in Vue, this component is only to be used in Vue. But most of the work done by these three, which but if we, for example, want to like see which one is doing the most of the work, we can see on the graph that React is way ahead of the others. So it's very popular. It doesn't always reflect in the, for example, in job offers. Sometimes we can see that there are lots of Angular job offers, not that much of, like, they are, for example, split half and half. However, this is what the downloads say, that a lot of work is done with React. This is also, I would say, because this is downloads, so this is also applying here with the fact that people are learning. So this is this kind of information we should consider also, that okay, there are downloads, it's very popular, but maybe there are lots of people who are just learning this technology, and downloads is made by this fact. But for example, in our company, we have a project. Every click makes the next slide. So recently, we had a few projects with Vue, React, and Angular is also getting popular, like kind of again, or it's hard to say. But there were recently we had a lot of projects also with Angular. So if you wanted to, for example, choose, you can choose whatever you pleased. If you learn working with one, going to the other one won't be hard. It won't be hard. It will be actually easy. I worked with React and I jumped into Vue, and it was the syntax, just the syntax, but under the hood you use the JavaScript, so you don't have to worry too much about choosing the framework. All of them have their advantages and disadvantages. It's not, there's no one the best, except maybe one, which is on the horizon, but it's, of course, I'm joking. It's Swell. It's a framework which works in a different way, and it's getting a bit, it's still very, it's very not popular. I haven't heard about the project, but it works in a different way, and it makes it quite fast. So the advantage of the Swell was that it's quite fast. Okay, I didn't forget about web components, because sometimes I forget about them. But yeah, the next thing, it's a topic related to JavaScript. We also heard about TypeScript, and we also hear about Flow. And what are these things? So, of course, JavaScript is a programming language, and TypeScript enhance JavaScript. It means that TypeScript is like superset of JavaScript, which basically you write JavaScript with some additional code, and this code adds, first of all, adds typings to the JavaScript. So if you, for example, didn't write before in TypeScript, in the very short way, it was like if your function accepts, for example, if your function is add, for example, and it adds some integers, so it accepts, of course, numbers. It cannot. So you type the parameters for the function that they are numbers. So every time you want to invoke this function with different things than different types than numbers, you will get an error. However, it's the TypeScript is compiled down to JavaScript. TypeScript, it's not the language that is run by the browser and anywhere else. Once the development process is done, or maybe like the part of so every time you save and you want to run this is compiled down to JavaScript. There's no sign of TypeScript anymore, and JavaScript is run in the browser, not the TypeScript. Another thing which is worth mentioning, it's Flow, and Flow does the same. I will go back shortly to TypeScript. TypeScript also gives you some extra features. This is not only about typing, but if you write in TypeScript, you have features which are, for example, not in the JavaScript language yet, or they may never be in the language itself, but it gives you this possibility that you write these new features, these features which kind of make your code more readable, more neat, shorter. You also can use all these features, but all this is compiled to JavaScript after that. So there's no, you are safe to use these features, because then they are like kind of changed in the code, and they are JavaScript code afterwards. And you can specify that, for example, if you want to, you can actually specify what version of JavaScript you want to compile your TypeScript to. So this is perfectly safe, but this is not the language. And Flow is a tool which gives you only the typings, which kind of checks the types of the the types. But I used the Flow in the previous project, and it was kind of deprecated. We didn't have much of the support because it was not so popular, so we didn't. It was very hard to find information if you got stuck into some problem. And if you see the graph which represents jobs, they are only in the 7. I'm kind of surprised by this, but only in 7% we have TypeScript as a language. However, I would say that at least a lot of these jobs here, they're actually TypeScript jobs, but they are not mentioned. They don't mention that this is actually TypeScript, because right now all of my projects were on TypeScript. So it's very important to learn this. So once you get acquainted a bit with JavaScript, you need to move and try to write in TypeScript. And yeah, this is a small graph just to show you the difference between these two tools for checking the types. It's Flow. Flow is very low, and the TypeScript, yeah, it's really strong. And this means that all these people who are using TypeScript here, they constantly adding some information. They constantly sharing the information about the tool itself. What are the trends on the backend? If you are interested in developing JavaScript on the backend, so for many years, Next.js, okay, for many years, I thought that then. Okay, I see some changes here actually. Okay, so so the most popular, it's right now Koa. It's because if you just quick introduction to these tools, if you use of course Node for the backend, but you don't write the code itself in the Node. You use a framework, like in the front end, use some kind of framework, and this framework allows you to write just shorter and smarter code. And there are tools which are rising in popularity. I'm kind of surprised that I don't see here Express. I thought that there is Express here. I can read that it is Express, but because Express is very popular framework on the backend. But I also heard before about Koa, and I see that Koa right now is very popular. So, well, you can still on the jobs. I saw the many Express, like asking for the Express framework, but I see that Koa is right now very popular. Testing. So about testing, of course, on the very beginning, you should get familiar with Jest testing. Jest is for the unit testing. It's very popular. It's very actually convenient to use. It's really good tool, and it was built like with the thoughts about the developers, so they don't have to swear when they write actually the tests. It's easy. I wouldn't say that it's very easy, but it's easier than the different tools I've used. And for sure, it's very popular. And wherever you go, you need to know how to write tests in Jest. In addition to this, you can also get familiar with end-to-end testing tool. This allows you to, for example, to click around the application, run the application in the browser and click around. So for example, if you want to check if you are developing something and you just want to automate your process of development, you can use Cypress for this. So this is actually a tool which run your application in the browser, and it will be finding buttons and things you want to click or you want to find. You just write the code that, and Cypress does the clicking and checking what happens on the with your application. So it's a really good development experience. I also mentioned here these two. They are also quite popular. And next one, it's the tools which we kind of help us in our development every day. And on the very beginning, very popular, it's Lodash. It's still Lodash. I mean, yeah, we use Lodash. It's really good actually to know the algorithms. Lodash does the thing for us. For example, if we want to sort something, we want to do something with our data, Lodash will come with the help. But on the other hand, we should also learn about the algorithms. So it is really helpful tool which we can use for our tasks with data, for example. There's also Rx.js, which is more applicable, I believe, for the Angular developers. And there's Ramda. It's not that popular, but I heard that it has a it's like Lodash, but it's with some extra features which are supposed to be better. So I never used Ramda, but I heard that this may be the tool which may be replacing the Lodash itself. So if you want to know more, if you, for example, are thinking what I should learn, what framework I should use, what tools are needed on the market, you should definitely check on the website, which kind of gathers this information and does the statistics. And this is the URL of the website. This is for the most current one, but basically this is stateofjs.com. You can find the information there. Okay, all right. I think that will be all for the presentation for today. Before we have still a lot of time. Before maybe we get to the questions, can we take like a 5 minutes break to grab something to drink, or maybe go to the toilet for very quick? And then we will go to the question part. I don't see any information back, but I understand that we all agree that we'll come back. It's 1950. Let's come back 1956. All right, I will be in 4 minutes. I will just grab something to drink. Okay, and prepare some question for me. Thank you. Okay, welcome back. I'm back, and I will check if there are any questions. So, Vadim, you can actually help me with this. So this is the place where attendees put questions, submitting chat.
Yeah, it is.
All right. Hi, everyone. So the question here from Ver is, what is compiled language? Compiled language means that we compile this language down to different state of the language, and it's in JavaScript we have the binary code, and this means the compilation. And for sure you need to like check and you will like really understand the thing if you read, for example, how real compiled languages, how they behave. For example, so I would advise here just to read how Java or different typical compiled language, how it works. So you have this state of the code which is compiled. Okay, and we have a question here from Ador. Most of the languages has to be compiled to run to some file like file X. JavaScript is compiled on the fly in the browser just in time. Yes, this is correct. I mean, probably Ador answered the question too well. All right, thank you, Ador. Yes, for sure. JavaScript, what is best of all? Which one is the hardest? The first one. Yes, I agree. The first one language is the hardest. If you go from one language to another one, you just learn the syntax. But basically, what the language do is very similar. What the languages do is very similar. You learn once you learn the concepts. Actually, it's not most important the syntax, which you in the beginning people consider syntax as a language, but actually what the language does, this is the most important. So once you learn in one language what it does, it's much easier to understand and just learn syntax and then apply the things, these ideas to different one. It may be here a bit difference between, for example, if you code only for front end, so you do something on the front end side, and then you need to switch to language like Java. It's actually, though it would be that easy, as I said, because on the backend you have different ideas and different approaches. However, still you will be good, for example, because if you know how to solve algorithms, which is a big part, for example, in learning languages, you will be still much better in the language, in the different language, because some of they still work very similar. So Svelte is compiler. As I heard, pretty hard. So about Svelte, I was watching. I didn't work in Svelte. I saw like presentation, like stream about Svelte, and the Svelte it seemed like just another framework. And even I saw the when they compared React, Angular, Svelte as a framework. I don't fully understand what you mean is compiler. Okay, then next you're following, as I heard, JS is pretty hard to start with for people who learn Java or any strongly typed language. They find it easier to start with TypeScript. Yes, this is what I actually said, and I totally agree. Going between Java and JavaScript, it's difficult. However, you will find a lot of much more similarities between Java and TypeScript. That's correct. TypeScript, yeah, in the syntax, it's and in the idea of like object-oriented programming, it's closer than JavaScript. However, you need to still, I believe that you need to still learn JavaScript first and then TypeScript. I don't think that like going to TypeScript, you still may go like this, but you will be, for example, encountering some errors, for example, or bugs, and you won't understand them if you don't understand the JavaScript and how it works. And as you mentioned, JavaScript, it's hard, and it's hard because it's much different than Java. And if you won't be able to just to figure it out based on your knowledge on Java. But thank you, Maciej, for your comment. Jasmine mentioned Jasmine, the testing tool. I remember learning Jasmine, but I was advised by a very like good developer, Angular developer, who advised me to learn Jest. I learned Jest, and it's basically used in every project for sure. So, but this is from my experience. But once you learn, for example, Jasmine or Jest, switching between Jest and Jasmine, it's easier. It's easy because the testing tools are very similar. So it's not like you need to like choose one and then stick to one. Probably you need to like prepare yourself that it's not like you will learn a tool and then you go to work and you're gonna be using these tools which you learned. It's not like this. It's we basically change the tools in every project. I just go from one project to different project and I use different tools. I use different framework. And the most important skill we should all have is like very quick learning and understanding the concepts. And here you mentioned Jasmine, but Jasmine, okay, you learn Jasmine, that's really good, but the next day you need to work with Jest. And then maybe you need to work with different, very niche tool, which you never heard about, but you have like a weekend just to study it. So I wouldn't be so strict about like practical tools. Sure. Lambda icon on the taskbar reminds me. Yeah, I also really like the 90s. I was very young in the 90s. I really like this time, even the colors. But now in the designs on websites, we can sometimes see something which remembers about this time. I really like the website which is called Glitch. It kind of reminds me about the old other way. No, Natalia, no, it's not over yet. 5 million questions, thanks. And now we are here. Pavel, what is the biggest selling point of Swell? You mentioned that it's fast, but currently Angular React are fast enough. Yeah, probably they are fast enough for sure. And tool which is fast and good enough, it's good. What is the biggest selling point? It works just different. I can tell you what I remember from the presentation. I can send you a link to the presentation, but it just works in a different way. When you update the DOM in the React, for example, it works really good. But when the application grows, for example, I can give you like an example here. So in the React, you have like virtual DOM and you have like real DOM. So if you want to update something in the DOM, they come up with the idea that there will be like comparing between you comparing between these two DOMs, and then you will update only necessary thing. But the comparing thing, it's also expensive. And if you have pages which content a lot, have a lot of content, they are like longer. The DOM is just growing bigger. You have big DOM. The comparison takes time and it's visible. And right now I heard that React has some kind of solution for that. And Swell solve this problem completely different. They generate some kind of string and I won't go into details of Swell because I'm not like qualified to this. I don't know too much, but it works just in the different way. And sometimes this is like comparing, for example, you have one thing like a gasoline car and you have electric car. They both, so you have gasoline car, but then suddenly someone comes and changed the game, just give you something completely different, which works different, and it's really hard to compete, for example, for the older technologies. So Angular, React are fast. That's true, Pavel. But this is just another, tool you can check out on. But for now, for sure, learning React, Angular, it's probably a much better idea than learning Svelte or some other niche technology. Paweł Kamiński, what is the difference between JS prototype and class approach of creating objects? So prototype in JavaScript works that you have like chain of prototype chain, and so you create objects which have links to different objects. And okay, but you mean, okay, because I thought that you mean the class approach in Java. Okay, this is something different. Okay, you're asking about JavaScript prototype class approach for creating objects. The output of both is the same. You get the same object. In class, you have different syntax, but under the hood, it works the same. If you, for example, have class and you want compile down this class to the previous syntax, for example, if you have TypeScript class, which is like JavaScript class, this is like JavaScript class, and you compile down this, you will get exactly the functions, the prototype, all this syntax, which is, and you combine this to ES5, you will get the same. And under the hood, the classes are functions. This not happened. This was not changed. It was just added as a syntactic sugar. It means that it doesn't add something to the language. It just changed the way how we interact with the language. Oh, and Vadim, thank you. Thread is a web component framework. Others are web technologies, while this is a standard-oriented framework. So why this is standard? Okay, Vadim, thank you. Paweł Waszczykowski. I'm new byte. I can only send you Schumacher as my guru. Okay, I believe that this is Lambda Half-Life. Okay, yeah. I also played in Half-Life. It's a good game. By the way, this is very good command line. It's CM there, commander. It's really good line. And this Lambda just adds a bit to this, but it's really good. Thanks, I haven't used it. Sweat is radical. Okay, Sweat is a radical new approach to building user interfaces, whereas traditional frameworks like React and Vue do the bulk of the work in the browser. Svelte shifts that work into compile step. That happens when you build your application. Instead of using technologies like virtual DOM deferring, Svelte writes code that surgically updates the DOM when the state of the application changes. Yes, so yeah, thank you, Vali Khan. Yes, and you added this link. So guys, I see that some of you are interested in Svelte. Go ahead, check on the website. It's for sure something new, and for sure learning frameworks like Angular, Vue, React, it's a very safe way you can learn, but also learning something different, Svelte, on the side probably, because we won't see this in maybe very soon, but learning this cutting edge technologies may, for example, in 2 years be a great investment, because you will be very familiar with Svelte, and Svelte will be rising in popularity. So this, however, we need to keep in mind that not only the tool itself is important, but the support for the tool. And we have Facebook and we have Google, which supports their frameworks, and this is also kind of important. Yes, it's only because Svelte is kind of exotic. Yeah, and blazing and fast. Vue done. Vue don't have strong back. It has also strong support of the Chinese people. And I think, if I am not mistaken, Vue is used for the AliExpress and Alibaba. I think they are very strong companies. We don't see them maybe that strong because they are not technological, but they are very strong. And on the other hand, Vue is very easy to use, and it's pleasant to work with. I worked with this Vue for a couple of months, and it's for sure not bad. But for example, if I was to choose only one, I would go for Angular or React, not Vue. Maybe because Vue is so easy, so it's better learn something a bit more difficult, and then go for Vue and learn over the weekend. Once you have to learn a different framework, so you will have two. Because when you start only with Vue, maybe Angular be a bit overwhelming. Yeah, some of you didn't like Angular. I know that. Some of us don't like React. Yeah, it's a common thing, but we actually are professionals. We shouldn't just choose the tool because we like it. Because very often at workplace, we are just required to work with some framework technologies, and we just need to work with them. Yes. So do you have any more questions related to the things I mentioned before, I said before during the webinar? Yes, yes, Maciej. This is not bad approach to start with React or Angular. But when you write React and Angular, yeah, like learning both at the same time may be a bit hard because you don't have to. You need to reserve time not only for React and Angular. You need to learn also a lot of different things like TypeScript, testing tools. So you need to, if you are studying this, you need to use your time like your asset, and you need to invest this asset only in the most important things. So learning like one framework at the time, it's good enough, and it's difficult enough. Any homework? Right now, I don't know if there's any homework. I think you should stick to the things you have in the list of the tasks. And I was reached already by four mentees, 4 students were assigned to me as a mentee, and I got in touch only with 2. They reached and contact me. So I think if you know who your mentor is and you want to schedule the interview, please reach at least me. That would be, for example, my mentees. That would be most convenient if you reach me, so we can schedule the technical interviews. So that was a small announcement to my mentees. Today's lecture is called JS Basic. It's I took JS Basics. I took this schedule from GitHub, and on the next lecture, in today's, we'll have data types and filtering, because I think data types will go quite fast, and data filtering it will be also. So it's splitted according to the GitHub. So that was the first one. Oh, I missed some. Yeah, so these are 2 of my lectures. This is JS intro and JS data types. And I will add to this because we need to deal with this data. When we have the data types like arrays, objects, we need to deal with them. So it's like more connected. Yeah, on Thursday. Welcome. Okay, Maciej, for sure. One thing happened to me today. When I was updating the Discord, it stopped working. So I will try. I think I need to uninstall it and install it again. And I hope I will get it back running. Yeah, but Maciej, don't worry. So I will reach you. In the browser, yes. Yeah. Probably I will have to if I try restart. Yeah, I did. Thank you. Yeah, I restarted, and it didn't help. But don't worry, guys. I think I will just Fix it tomorrow. Try to start. Yes, I try to turn on and off computer. Yes, Maciej, I would appreciate if you just write this on Telegram. Yeah, because the second one, I didn't have any problems. Great, thank you. Thanks as well. It's actually a weird thing that I can't hear you and just talking to you. Yeah, very welcome, Asia.
Yeah, Pavel, thank you for good lecture.
Thank you too, guys. Thank you. And thank you for preparing this webinar, Hannah. Thanks. I saw the projects you are working with, and I think they are not that easy. And I think you are all doing very good job. And I saw also that this code wars, this is also very impressive. You learn, and you know you will learn a lot. It's great work. You're welcome, Varkilan.
Do you mind if I stop with the recording if there is no any questions?